Okay, so recording should be underway again. Okay, thank you very much for joining us. It looks like we've got 8 people on the call today. So for those who don't know me, my name is Kevin Connor. I work at Red Hat. I'm an engineering manager at Red Hat, and one of the teams that I run is the Istio team there. So it's my privilege, I guess, to run the call today. My turn in the schedule. So we have a short agenda. Unfortunately, I used up quite a lot of my demo slots for previous meetings where I was supposed to be leading this right out of people that I could pull in to do demos and things like that. So unfortunately, we just have a short agenda today. So the first thing that I wanted to cover was the releases from last week. There were 2 releases which went out, and Brian Avery, who's on the call, he works at Red Hat as well. He was driving the CVE portion of those releases. There was an update for 147, which included an update for Kiali. There was an issue there with the way that they were verifying the tokens, and they'd included a signing key, a static signing key within the container that they were distributing, so that had to be fixed. That was also rolled into 151 along with a number of other stability changes as well to improve the release there for 1.5. So those were shipped out last, I think it was last Wednesday, if I remember rightly. Brian, can you confirm?
Yeah, I believe, yeah, last Wednesday, I believe is correct.
Great. So if you're using 1.4 or 1.5 and you haven't updated, then we definitely advise you to do that, especially for the Kiali issue if you're using Kiali there. So that's the only topic that I wanted to bring up today. It looks like, John, you've added in an issue, support for using Kubernetes as CA for Citadel. Do you want to briefly?
I think at a previous community meeting, like the topic came up of like using of Citadel, and I think it might have been in context of using Vault. And I believe someone mentioned the idea that you could somehow configure Istio to use Kubernetes as the certificate signer, since Kubernetes has like cert signing requests and various things like that. And I tried looking through the docs to find out any more information about that, and I couldn't find anything. So I don't know whether I remembered or understood things wrong, or there is a way of doing that that I can't find or remember. Does anyone know anything about that off the top of your head? Use case, or what is not being uncomfortable having a Kubernetes secret that has the private key of the CA floating around, because I just don't entirely trust someone with enough kube control permissions could steal that and then impersonate pretty much anything.
Yeah, I know the use case. That's certainly one that we are interested in as well, but on our side, we haven't done any investigation into that. I know there was a new component brought in with 1.4, which does it through DNS. I'm not sure whether that is possible to integrate there. Is there anybody on the call who would know? Bram, would you know anything about that?
No, I don't know.
Okay, I could certainly take that as an action item for the next meeting. We can push it into the next meeting.
All right, I could just post it on either the Discord.
Discuss.
The Discuss, yes, not the Discord. Different. Our Discord server. That'd be awesome.
It would be, wouldn't it?
kind of like people who use it as a system administration tool. You know, we figure out some way of using, I don't know, Fortnite for configuring Istio.
Okay, so sorry, yeah, that's not something that I know off the top of my head. It doesn't sound as if anybody on the call knows that one as well. So yeah, I mean, take it to Discuss and we can chase it up there. And I know that we're definitely interested in that from the Red Hat side. That's one of the things that we have to do as part of our next release. So we can get somebody to take a look if nobody else can answer that. Okay, anybody else have any other topics to bring up? Ram,
this is John.
So this is a generic problem with Kubernetes specifically. So right now, running Istio as a sidecar for short-lived jobs is being a problem. And there are two problems there. One is whenever the short-lived container gets into completed state, like there's no mechanism to kill the sidecars. And the second one is due to ordering of the things, sometimes these short-lived jobs are just making networking requests before the Istio sidecar comes up, and then this is just causing failures. And since these short-lived jobs, like normally the suggested way is just doing a retry or restart and move along, but due to some data processing jobs that we have, it is not possible to retry because we don't know whether it is stemming from a networking request or a data processing problem. And this is specifically being an issue for Kubeflow pipelines for us because we are unable to just get into the line and then try to add some wait statements before making networking requests. And we are normally planning to just like develop some hacky solutions around things, but I don't know if anyone else has any recommendations about this problem.
So this
Yeah.
is. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I remember I ran across an open source GitHub repo of someone that basically created a wrapper binary that effectively waited for everybody to start, and then after your forks your thing, and when that ends, it sends the die signal to Envoy.
Yeah, I saw that one, but the problem is this Kubeflow pipeline thing because we are unable to just inject that to those containers.
Okay.
But we are planning to do a similar thing. Probably we are gonna just create a separate mutating webhook controller where we're gonna just inject some scripts to do a similar thing, and also there will be a separate controller which will be checking the container statuses and then kill Istio proxies whenever all the other containers are in completed state.
Yeah, and it's just posted the sidecar container is the seems like the proper fix for that, but that's
yeah, like
coming in 119, 120, something in the future.
Yeah, and also probably it will be an alpha first, which is like we are unable to use alpha features. So I feel like that it is gonna be a year ahead for us.
Yeah, so on our side, we did some investigation with CNI where we actually had a version of CNI which kickstarted the Envoy process as well, rather than deploy it in a sidecar. So we were already using it to set up the IP tables. The issue, Marco Luxa was the person in Red Hat who did that. There is likely a GitHub repo around with his stuff there. The issue that we had with that, though, was that because the proxy was being started in through the CNI, that there was no real way for Kubernetes to either restrict or track the resource usage for the sidecar. So we couldn't find a way to actually make Kubernetes aware of the fact that it was running and get it restricted through the cgroup stuff. So Marco was certainly working on the sidecar proposal and providing feedback onto that there. I think that he did have some issues with that there. I think it's kind of like a 75–80% solution to what we had there. And I think it was to do with the fact that even with the sidecar, they split the init container part from the main containers. So if I remember rightly, it's been a while since I've read that. But you ended up with 2 different sets of sidecars for that. You had to actually specify it twice if I remember. There was something strange like that there. But like you say, that's for a future version of Kubernetes. But it's if you can get away with using CNI and you don't mind the fact that the sidecars are not, the resource usage for the sidecars is not tracked, then you could look at Marco Luxa's work and see if you can get that to get that up and running. And he would certainly be more than willing to help.
Oh yeah, I'll take a look at that. Thanks for the suggestion.
But otherwise, yeah, I mean, the race is something that I think just about everybody who's dealt with sidecars has come up with in the past. John Motter, sorry, do you have a link to the project that you were mentioning there?
Yeah, I'm trying to find that. It's one of those, like my Google foo is not immediately working for me, so I'm sure I can hunt it down somewhere.
And Ishmael's just pointed to this.
Yeah, like for a separate job, we have followed a similar approach. At least for that one, we were able to just inject some scripts. It was more in control.
Yeah, if and when I can find it, I'll add a link to the document.
So the comment that Ishmael has pointed to is pretty much doing the same thing there. So it's waiting for the sidecar healthy state before it goes and runs the command. And then it's got its trapping exit and then sending the quit signal.
Okay.
So if you could tie that in with injection, that would likely do it.
That's clever. Yeah, the trap bit.
Yeah, yeah, nice and clean.
Here it is. Envoy pre-flight.
Oh yeah, I also looked into that too.
Maybe this should be on the document actually, while we are waiting for sidecar cap.
Agreed. Yeah, we've really hesitated to get into this space because sidecar was the right way to solve it. But seeing as how that can keeps getting kicked down the road, it seems like it might be time to bite the bullet here.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, would it be different for the Istio sidecar? Could you do something like kind of watch to see if the other container has exited?
We are going to implement something like that, but this is going to definitely be separate from the rest of the Istio components.
Yeah.
At least yesterday I was able to just come up with some work in POC, which was just checking the container statuses and also injecting some stuff to wait for Istio proxy. And yeah, it worked fine. I just wanted to double check if there is anything else before we start implementing and spending some time on this.
Yeah, we just basically wrote a bash script that checks to see if there's a sidecar. If so, it sits in a loop, and otherwise ops. Same idea.
John, since it sounds like you're pretty invested in spending some time on this and getting this up and running for Kubeflow, would love to see a blog post from you that we might be able to put out on Istio.io or the Kubeflow site about how you guys got around this.
Yeah, sure. Like probably towards the end of this month, we will come up with some solution here. Again, it is not something that we would be proud of because it is just going to be some sort of hacky solution, but it would buy us some time before the sidecar resources.
Yep.
I don't think there's going to be a nice, clean solution to this until the sidecar comes along.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, that was certainly the conclusion we came to. Yeah, it's one way or the other. It's just a case of finding something which best suits your use case, I think.
Some kind of irrelevant addition here is I also looked into telepresence in the meantime to just run things from my local environments and allow Kubernetes clusters to connect to my laptop, and it worked pretty well. I remember seeing the demo here in one of these community meetings, and I'm not sure if those folks are here at the moment, but thanks for the work as well.
They're not on the call today. I mean, those guys work on my team as well within Red Hat. So they've been doing telepresence, but they also did what's the Solo IO project as well. Solo IO had a project which I'm struggling to remember the name of, where you could run a debugger in the remote cluster, and then it would proxy the connection through to your local debugger. And telepresence does it the other way around, where you can run something locally and then it proxies all the traffic and stuff down to your local instance. So it's two sides of the same coin. If you look under github.com/Maestra, you'll find their work there. And they were talking about recording a video with the demos as well, so I'll chase them up and see if we can get that into the agenda and get it into the notes for today's call.
Maestra? Like Maestro with an A?
Yeah, let me...
M-A-I. They've got a bunch of stuff Istio related.
Yeah, that's our community for our Istio fork, essentially. So we added things like self-multi-tenancy and stuff like that there, specifically to integrate with OpenShift. But we have some other projects in there as well. So Aslak and Bartosz are the two guys who work on that side. And they're doing this independently of the work that we're doing around the service mesh work, but with that in mind and with using Istio as part of the solution. I think it's where it is. I'm trying to think what the project is called. 1 second, let me find it. The workspaces. Yeah, so workspaces. I'll add this in. Oops.
And what does this workspace project do, Kevin?
It's so Aslak and Bartosz have been investigating how we can improve the development process. So it supports two projects. Telepresence is one, and I wish I could remember the name of the solo IO one as well, which is there. Let me see if they mention it.
Glue? No, that's
no. Yeah, Glue kind of wraps the service mesh configuration side of things. I can't remember the name of the solo IO one, but the idea is that you can run debugging through two different. You can run stuff within a cluster in two different ways. You can either deploy something. Squash, that's it. Thank you. Yeah, down there. So you can run things in the cluster in two different ways. You can either have something run locally and have it be proxied from the cluster through to your local instance. So the tooling that they have developed will set up telepresence to do that. It will set up the rules within Istio so that it intercepts the traffic if you've got the right headers and things like that. So you can select which traffic is going to be captured by your development instance and which. And everything else will just go to the normal instances within the cluster. And then you have Squash, which does it the other way around, which through a proxy on the cluster will set up a remote debugging session with something which is running there, and then that will proxy that down to your local client, your local debugging client. So you can then debug something live within the cluster itself. So it's two different approaches depending on whether you want to proxy the traffic or you want to proxy the debugging session. But it just gives alternatives for that. But they're developing tools around that. They did do the demo a few weeks ago. That was one of the ones that I arranged. I think it was Dan Berg who was running that call. So I'm not sure whether there's a recording of that there. But Bartosz and Aslak were going to go away and do a recording of the session and send that around. So I will chase them up about that and get it into the minutes.
Yeah, looks like Weaveworks has a blog post comparing the Squash versus telepresence, but it's about 1.5 years old. So I imagine they've both evolved since then.
Yeah, they have, but they're kind of alternatives. I mean, I don't think you can. I certainly wouldn't choose one or the other. I think both have their place. So it all depends on what suits your workflow.
That's true. Good point.
So that's why we're looking at both of them. We're not really choosing one or the other. We're just trying to develop something around that to help ourselves as well as others to do debugging within the service mesh. Or well, within the cluster in general, but we're particularly focused on service mesh. Okay. So is there anything else on those topics before we move on? Okay. Any other topics?
I noticed that I was just thinking to myself that didn't Kubernetes just come out with like debug containers or ephemeral containers or something like that? Wondering if anyone has used those to like kind of deal with Istio. And I know it seems like a common thing if you want to like muck with envoys, just create like port forward and then just like make a call to dump envoy config or something like that. Has anyone done anything interesting with sort of ephemeral containers?
Yeah, hi, this is Lynn. So we have some interest to leverage ephemeral containers. So one of the challenges we have today is we find out the images that Istio use, especially for the sidecar proxy, that sometimes there are like OS operating system have security vulnerabilities. Then you have to kind of update those, and sometimes it's the tools we are using like cur, different commands, the shell, the bash. I think we provide just plain shell, and different tools we embed into our proxy images. Sometimes those tooling have vulnerabilities. So we do plan to leverage ephemeral containers. But we did try ephemeral containers. I can't remember, it was 1.16 or 17. We couldn't get it working. It was when it was like an experimental feature of Kubernetes, and we tried it. We couldn't get it working. But the community does have intention, at least through design documentation, that we wanted to look into ephemeral container when it's mature, so that the users can run over base image. Gosh, there was a word that we have on those base image that without providing you any debug tooling, without shell commands.
Like a distroless image?
Yeah, distroless. Yeah, so we do have a distroless image today, but we couldn't turn that distro image as the default because it doesn't provide a shell and there's no debug tooling associated with it. So we were hoping through ephemeral container support, user could attach a ephemeral container at the runtime, and we would provide the ephemeral container image for our user for the proxy, so they would be able to run distroless image by default, and then attach the ephemeral container as needed to debug things.
Hey, Michael here from a big bank. When we looked into the ephemeral container stuff, I think one of the challenges is to enable that. You need to set privilege settings to allow sharing of PIDs, either PIDs or namespace. I can't remember what it is, but you need to have a setting on the host that allows you to share some of those settings across for that ephemeral container stuff to work. So we haven't even tried to test it yet, but our expectation is that having to relax the PSB or elevate privileges to enable that stuff is going to be problematic for us. But I think that's something that's required to enable that new functionality in 1.18.
Like a kernel flag or something like that too, or low level Linuxy stuff.
Yeah, yep.
I can Google it. That's fine.
Yeah, no, you've got to set. It's a sharing. It's either PIDs or namespaces. I can't remember. You need to set a flag that shares that at a kernel level across at the host. So you need to break some security boundaries to enable that functionality to work.
It's
so you were able to.
Sorry, go ahead, Lynn.
I was just going to check. So you were able to get it working with the right path security policy with federal container?
No, we didn't even try to get it to work because
Oh, because of that restriction. Gotcha.
Yeah, relaxing our security policy is not something we'll do lightly.
Got you. Yeah, I know a couple of us had trouble. Somebody from IBM, Greg, and also somebody from Google also tried. Both of them couldn't get it working. It's certainly not intuitive to use if anyone actually got it working. So.
Okay, good to know.
Okay, any other topics that anybody wants to bring up today? Anything? Okay, Lynn, Ram, do you have anything that you want to add today?
Nothing for me.
Lynn, Dan?
Yeah, nothing for me. I guess one thing I want to share is I don't know if Swada is on the call. So I noticed she's been starting to send out like weekly newsletter for new things going on within the Istio project, and it's been tremendously helpful for me. I don't know if any of you have seen that. Some of the work group leads and maybe TOC member have seen it. So it's just so nice to see community actually making an effort to record what's going on a weekly basis across different work groups and be able to actually share that information through an email. So we'll have to look into how do we actually share that even at the wider audience, maybe on Discuss, so that if users are interested in helping with the Istio development in any way, at least they'll be well informed of what's going on.
Lynn Schweda is always on every call.
And my immediate reaction is, oh, I would love to see that weekly email.
Okay, yeah. So
she was on this call before. I think she had to drop.
Yeah, because I think it would be tremendously useful for people if there's interest. So at least to me, it was very useful.
Do you have a link to this?
I find these community calls really useful to get a feel for sort of what's going on in between, like the big releases that have blog posts and all that. So it's such a fast-moving, evolving project. So keeping an eye on stuff like that is really useful to me.
Yeah.
Lynn, do you have a link to the newsletter?
So the last one I saw is like a private email to a bunch of folks, to like work group leads and everybody. I can dump the contents to here. I don't think it's a problem because it's nothing confidential. But we do need to. I'll work with Swada to see, can we share on like a general channel, maybe some appropriate channel on Discuss, so it's like open to everybody.
Yeah, big plus one to that, and don't share things unbeknownst to her. That's totally fair. But a public version of that would be super awesome. I love that.
Yeah, and it's not an actual effort because she's already doing this for the work group leads and TOC members, so might as well share to everybody.
Yeah, I mean, so I agree with that as well. I think having this kind of thing public is a great asset.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other topics? Anything else to bring up, Lynn?
Another thing that's worth mentioning is that people should keep an eye out on the blog section. Like I know just in March, there's been blogs about, hints at what's coming in 2020, what's going on with Istio, like why we did it, how it affects you, the new WASM stuff coming in, and how to, extend and write your own filters. A lot of good blog posts in there. I'll post a link to it in the document, but yeah, it's something to keep up with.
Yeah, if you could add a link in for that. Oh, it's there. Somebody's done that. Thank you very much. Okay. Are there any other useful sources of information like that that you're aware of?
No, I mean, discuss in Slack if you have any questions, but.
Okay. All right. Any other topics? Danberg, did you have anything to add?
Sorry, couldn't get off mute fast enough. No, nothing specific at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, right, final call from anybody else in that case. Any other topics to discuss this week? Okay, I'm not hearing anything.
Yeah, so we'll see everyone in 2 weeks, right?
Yep, I'll stop recording now. Thank you very much for attending, and we'll see you all in a couple of weeks' time.
Yep, thanks for running the call, Kevin.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.